Well, first and foremost, I'd like to welcome you to our session. My name is Carla Rodriguez, and I lead Intel's client software development and enabling, which means we get the opportunity to work with many software partners in our ecosystem, and you'll be hearing from some of them shortly. So welcome to our session. We will be discussing how AI PCs are really unlocking a lot of great new experiences for both consumers and folks in the commercial segment. And it is this hardware and software ecosystem which is really critical to the advancement and acceleration of AI PCs, which hopefully you're seeing a lot of that on full display here at CES. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our esteemed guests today. So first and foremost, I'm gonna start off with our moderator. On our panel is my colleague, Robert Hallock. Robert leads our client AI and technical marketing team. So Robert, how about you join us? Awesome. And joining Robert are Dan Huynh. He's Vice President of Business Development at McAfee. So big round of applause. Yes, thank you. We also have Brendan Ittelson joining us from Zoom. He's the Chief Ecosystem Officer. Very cool title, Brendan. And we have Elise London, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Lakeside Software. Thanks, Elise, for joining us all the way from Florida. And John Yu, on the other side of the coast from California. He's VP of Sales and Business Development at Cyberlink. And I've had the distinct pleasure of working with each and every one of you over the last couple of years. And first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for making the time to be here with us and the rest of the folks here. And with that, I'll hand it over to Robert to start the session. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Carla. First of all, it is our huge pleasure to have all of you here to attend this panel. I want to first let all of our panelists have a chance to introduce their product, what you're working on, what's going on in AI at your business, and Dan, we'll start with you.
Great. First, thank you, Robert and Carla, for that awesome introduction, and happy to be a partner with you guys. My name's Dan Huynh. I'm Vice President of Business Development at McAfee. I lead our AI strategy, also our ecosystem alliances as well, for an AI for Good alliance and coalition, using AI technologies for the benefit of end consumers. A lot of you probably know what McAfee is. We've been around for many decades. We've been focused on device security in the early days. We've moved on as threats kind of expanded into identity and privacy issues, and more recently, scams and deepfakes, actually. We invested in AI, talking about AI. We invested in it 5 years ago. We created a smart AI engine, and ultimately, it's the engine that is powering our antivirus and device security today. It's #1 in terms of real-world protection from AV comparatives, a third-party test. In addition to that, it's a very lightweight product. So it's the lightest weight in the industry as of the last test results. So your battery life is fine, your latency is fine for doing other things. We're out of the way, we're making sure you're secure. But to nerd out a little bit, the thing I'm most excited about is it allows us to build more AI capabilities on top of that. And I'm here to talk about our scam detector technologies and specifically deepfake technologies.
All right, thanks. And Brendan, you're a titan of the industry, your company, everybody knows you, but tell us a little bit about what's up in your world.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here and having this conversation. So, as you said, a lot of people probably know Zoom for one of our products, our meetings solution. But really at Zoom, our focus is how do we be the AI-first work platform for people to communicate and collaborate? And so, in our journey, we're really focusing on how do we build those human connections, whether that is through meetings, through phone calls, whiteboarding, all these solutions, and we're constantly expanding that. And AI is a key part of that solution. We've launched our AI Companion, which offers so many solutions to enable workers to have access to AI in their flow of work while they're communicating and collaborating, so people can focus on this communication that we're doing, because that's what's so valuable. So very exciting what we're doing there, and exciting about the partnership and what we've been able to build.
Elise, you were telling me about all sorts of very nerdy and interesting stuff yesterday. We'll get into all of that, but what's up in your world?
Well, again, thanks for having me here. It's great to be an Intel partner. So like Carla said, I'm the CTO at Lakeside Software, and unlike Zoom and McAfee, I know we're not a household brand in quite the same way. So I'll tell you a little bit about Lakeside and what we do. So we have a product called SysTrack, which is an application for enterprise IT organizations to basically enable their employees to be as productive as they possibly can. And we do this by having a big data collection agent application that is deployed across the entire ecosystem, so your entire fleet, either laptops, desktops, or servers, or virtual machines, and we collect kind of a silly amount of data. It's about 10,000 pieces of data every 15 seconds, and we use that to make various kinds of decisions. So one of the most popular applications is proactive IT, so if you want to understand or prevent problems from happening on an endpoint, we can use that data to identify anomalies, to fix the problem before the user even realizes that they have a problem. We'll enable the user to fix their own problem. And then, of course, we can see problems across the entire fleet. So if there's anomalies that suddenly, your CPU spikes across half your organization, I'd like to understand why that's happening before it's a big problem. You can sort of think of us like the data dog of endpoints.
All right, thanks, Elise. And last but certainly not least, John, Cyberlink, you're doing a lot. What's up?
Yeah, I'm John with Cyberlink, VP of Sales. Cyberlink is a creative software company, and we're really focused on developing editing and design tools for any creator, regardless of your skill level in editing. If you've designed anything before, we want to give you an application to help you create whatever you want to create. We're most known for a couple of titles from our video and photo editing areas, Power Director and Photo Director.
So as you may have heard sometime this week, about 40% of all the PCs that are going to be shipped in this year, 2025, are actually going to be AI enabled. That's a huge chunk of the market, and by the end of 26, we think about 100 million PCs will be in circulation with AI capabilities. So all of these companies, and Intel alike, we're talking about offline AI use, AI that doesn't need an internet connection, AI that is being accelerated by a compute engine of some kind. We'll dive into that on the device. So, starting with Dan, you all have different perspectives, of course, on the engines and the trends that are going on in the market. But what are you seeing, Dan, with AI PC?
Yeah, if we take a step back and look at the trends that we're seeing, obviously AI is this giant wave that's come across a lot of our industries. There's productivity gains, there's efficiencies, there's collaboration, there's creativity, right? And for someone like me, who's kind of a novice at some creativity stuff of like putting together my family photos, or if I'm not in the right mind space and I want an email to sound perfect, I'll use an agent to help me, right? But all these things that make it easy for me, and those of us in this room, also make it easy for bad actors. And so, unfortunately, we are seeing, as we've seen this wave of AI come, we've actually seen a spike where the top 2 threats now in the last 2 years, and it's been pretty stable since then, entering 25, is scams and deepfakes overall. And then when we look at our research and we talk to consumers and endpoint users, they're saying that they're concerned about their financials and their well-being there, and also their reputation. And a lot of that is some fear about scams and misinformation or disinformation in these videos or images or audio clips, basically. And I just wanted to ask the audience here, like, how many of you in the last month have received a text message or an email that might seem a little bit fishy, like maybe a package is undelivered, or maybe you got to reset your PayPal account or something like that, right? And even this week, I'm sure a number of you, just probably this morning, got something like that, right? So the proof is in the pudding there. Unfortunately, we're seeing that. And polling our users, we're seeing that 2/3 of people are concerned about deepfakes and misinformation, and then half of people aren't sure like what they're looking at. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it a combination? And so with a tool like the AI PC and leveraging both software and hardware together, it helps kind of make you feel confident online again.
So Dan, using AI to make security faster but also better.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if we can do it on the edge, on the endpoint, then it makes it more private because we're doing inferencing, we're doing analysis, processing locally, and your data is not going anywhere. We're not recording anything either, so it's just letting you know if it's synthetically generated or not.
Yeah, so in the respect of endpoint and local, collaboration, working together in business, what trends are you seeing?
So for Zoom, I mean, we look at the trend of how work has changed in the last few years. We have folks that are 100% remote, some folks that are 100% in the office, and then those hybrids. So where people are actually getting work done has changed dramatically, and what that means in terms of where data is stored, connectivity, the security, all of that is top of mind for our customers. Now, you combine that with rolling out AI and rationalizing where they're making those investments and where that's running and where their data is flowing, they're constantly looking at where is the right place to put these workloads, and do I have, the trust, is the performance right, and all of those characteristics. So being able to move more to the edge enables all of those different capabilities.
And Elise, proactive fleet management, how is AI impacting you in Lakeside?
Lots and lots of different ways. So you both touched on the really, really cool features that you've added. And generally speaking, across the industry, we're seeing software take advantage of the new NPUs on the AI PCs in a way that's very near and dear to me. So the NPU is basically just extra compute that these companies now have available to them that most importantly does not impact the user's experience. So my product SysTrack and Lakeside is all about what's called digital employee experience, or DEX. There's a whole Gartner Magic Quadrant. It's a big, relatively new thing. And if you have all this extra compute on the computer available to do things like deepfake detection or better security analysis or better phone calls, you have a better employee experience. So I see a lot of companies, especially ones that have agent-based applications, taking advantage of kind of running this stuff behind the scenes so it doesn't impact your user experience.
And then, John, I think it's fair to say that most people's exposure to AI is in the realm of content creation, but that is changing all the time. How has that affected Cyberlink's business and the products you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, in a post-COVID world, this new digital world, digital marketing has just become a necessary requirement for any type of business. And so one of the things that we were really focused on was trying to figure out how we can help small business owners be able to handle this new world where they have to create digital content. And a lot of them have no idea where to start. They've never had experience editing anything in their life, but they need to create this content. And so what we're trying to figure out is how we can leverage AI to eliminate that hurdle and enable them to create the content that they need to create.
So as Elise touched on, these new CPUs actually have multiple AI accelerators inside, and there's a good use for one over another, and it depends on the kind of workload you're doing. So, open question for our panelists. What engines are you using? Why did you choose to use those? How is that affecting your roadmaps, your product plans? And that's just open.
I guess I'll kick it off. So, as we look at AI and we look at the levers that we can use, like we've created this smart AI engine from a software perspective, and then looking at the XPUs that are out there with CPU, GPU, NPU, right? We've used CPUs and GPUs for quite a while now. And when the NPU came out, we were excited about it because our deepfake detector models actually worked really well. And we saw a 2x benefit in terms of being performant on the NPU itself, and it was easy to enable our PC OEM partners as well as part of that. And keeping things on the edge is nice and private. So it just really worked out for us, and it was a 1 + 1 = 3 type of situation for us.
Elise, how about you?
So there's a couple things. One is we have the majority of that data that I mentioned that we pull, we keep that on the edge. So it gives us a lot of possibilities for doing really sophisticated types of anomaly detection and being able to identify common problems that you really wouldn't be able to find on your own. So that's how we're looking at it. But we have a release coming out in 2 weeks. That is allowing other companies, like probably all of yours, if you wanted to actually measure how much of the NPU, the GPU, the CPU is being used. So we've been measuring all that stuff forever, but the NPU is relatively new. So that we can tell you what applications are using the NPU, how much they're using it, if you have computers that are using applications that could be using the NPU, like McAfee, and you're not taking advantage of it. So we're helping enterprise organizations or smaller organizations be able to take the data that exists out there and make smarter decisions on your purchasing.
And I'll go to John next. Content creation is a very compute-intensive task in AI. How is Cyberlink using it?
Yeah, so we developed an application. It's called Promio. And what it allows you to do is just use simple text prompts, like as you would with ChatGPT, to generate imagery and also copy. For a small business owner, if they want to create a social media ad, we'll literally let them create that just by entering a description of what they want to create. And we initially were utilizing cloud services to do that. But what we quickly found out was that sometimes the generations were quite slow, and also the server costs were just getting really, really expensive. So now with the Intel-powered AI PCs, we can bring that all onto the local device. And so now users can just generate unlimited times as much as they want without having to pay any additional costs for credits and things of that nature.
So that's a great example. For many months, I was an OpenAI subscriber for ChatGPT, for image creation, text generation, but all of that capability now exists on the laptop that I have on my desk from Intel. So that's a direct subscription that has been eliminated from my life. I get that $20 a month back for something else, and that's a real change in my own workflow. Brendan, how is Zoom using these engines to drive collaboration?
Well, for us, we really look at our workload and figure out where is the best place to run it. And when we look at all the different use cases, there are things where doing it on an AI PC is the only thing that makes sense. Whether we're talking about performance to have it running locally because that is the best place to optimize that work, or if for the security of the data. We have folks, for example, that use end-to-end encrypted meetings. Zoom has no access to any of that. Using that AI at the endpoint is the only way to offer those AI capabilities in that super secure environment. So we're constantly looking at the workload and going, putting it on the edge just makes so much sense in so many use cases, and we're getting that demand from our customers as well.
I'll add, there's a couple things that are particularly useful about the MPU, and that is that it does matrix math really, really well. So there's tons of machine learning algorithms that use matrix math as their primary. Large language models are a fantastic example. But the thing that I think is really kind of cool about it is it does it with low power. So you can do all this stuff on GPUs and CPUs, but it's very expensive in terms of power consumption. It's expensive in the cloud in terms of power consumption. So if you can kind of think about it from a sustainability aspect and from all that idle time that the computer is just sitting there on, you might as well take advantage of it for all these use cases.
Well, and that performance and that battery power, same thing that we're seeing. I mean, our users jumping between meetings and all of that, we hear about range anxiety with their computer battery, day to day. And when we offload some of these tasks to the AI PC and the MPU, we see a 2x battery increase by offloading that work. So it's amazing at what that can do to allow someone to have that complete workday and continue to operate and focus on what they're trying to get done.
I think what our panelists are highlighting is that there's this broad trend towards AI being infused in kind of any category of application that you touch. And it's going to reach a point very quickly where you may know if there's an AI algorithm or not, but it is there and it's improving performance, it's adding features, it's reducing power consumption, and very quickly these PCs are going to be very dependent on these AI features and accelerators to provide these next generation capabilities. So John, what does that mean for an everyday user? You know, Cyberlink is consumer focused. You've got some very cool creative abilities. How do you think that's going to impact users?
I think it's just going to open up just unlimited ability to create, right? Just right now with the cloud services, like I said, they're just they get throttled in terms of how much content they can create. There's additional costs that they may have to pay to create. Well, with an AI PC, all of that is gone.
It's all
they can
free.
just do it
Yeah, it's
all
right there.
free and do it unlimited.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay, Elise, how can companies measure their use of AI in their fleet? You know, that's a challenging problem now because there aren't many tools available to do that at a fleet level. But Lakeside does that.
Yeah, obviously you use our product, but I think it's really important to understand if you're going to go in and say, I'm going to change all of our purchasing decisions for hardware to include AI PCs, that you understand how your vendors are going to take advantage of them. So you could use a product like ours to measure how much different applications take advantage of the NPU, but if I were you all, I'm assuming we have a lot of kind of IT folks in this room, I would go poke all of your vendors and see what their roadmap looks like, especially if it makes sense and they're running an application on the edge. Like all of us run native applications on the edge. It's not all in the cloud. So it makes a lot of sense to take advantage of new hardware, new software when it's around.
Dan, you know, there's this trend here about using AI locally to drive a better experience for users. And, you know, I think it's no secret that security software can be heavy. It can be, right? And it's important that it's heavy because it has to look at a lot in the system. So how is McAfee using that AI hardware to accelerate the experience?
So first, it can be heavy.
It doesn't have to be.
And so, yeah, so leveraging AI actually allows us to be less heavy and not impact battery life, not impact other things you're doing. And having 3 levers and accelerators on the chip itself allows us to run certain models on different accelerators themselves, right? So deepfake detectors on NPU, but we also leverage CPU and GPU as well. And being able to do that, we can optimize and customize depending on what that use case is, so we don't bring down any performance, so that we keep, you know, the person confident, but yet don't impact their everyday living. And so with the AI PC coming out, when we start talking with our PC OEM partners, with Intel, with Microsoft, like that was a big concern. It's like there's a perception that you know, security has to be very heavy and bloated, and it doesn't have to be, and especially if you're using the latest technologies and coupling that with hardware on the device. It's the best of both worlds, and we can keep things as much as possible on the device, on the edge, so that you're more secure and all your stuff is more private.
Right, so you're eliminating potentially on-premises servers or cloud subscriptions to do threat analysis remotely and then bring it back, which has a potentially dangerous time cost to it, right? The lower latency is better.
Yeah, lower latency is better, and then if you're doing all that inferencing, all the analysis, all the processing locally, then you know you're keeping all that data for that user right there.
Okay, let's move on to some use cases. Brendan, Zoom has a number of new AI features in its portfolio. What are some individual ones you're really excited about?
So the portfolio is continuing to grow, but what really gets exciting to me is how we're building it and expanding it. And it is more than just generative AI that we're doing. I look at one of the features that we released on the AI PC of our virtual background capability. Being able to offload that to the MPU and the quality that we get with the savings, it is a game changer for our customers of being able to do that isolation, whether that's the visual isolation with the virtual background or the audio isolation with our audio features, so that folks that are in a noisy environment, you only hear the speaker. And with that, you think about what we're doing in terms of by offloading it locally and getting that performance increase, none of that is ever going to the cloud, so we're keeping it more secure because all that processing, all of that is happening locally. We're able to improve all of our network transmission because we're sending cleaner signal up. And so it's really exciting seeing what this can do, and it's the groundwork for expanding this to a number of other things that we're looking at using the AI PC in the future.
Now, we all work on products here. We all love all of our children equally. But John, same question. Do you have a favorite feature in your Cyberlink stack?
I love our Magic Designer. Just the ability to just bring my thoughts and my narration and put it into a prompt and then see that come alive.
It's pretty cool, right?
It's
Like,
pretty
if
cool.
you haven't used a piece of software like that before, I highly recommend you check it out. It is pretty life-changing, especially if you're in a creative industry. I myself am in marketing, so generative tools are very powerful for me and my staff at Intel. So, but going back to security, how does AI change security implications for a system, for an individual system or at a fleet level, right? It's both beneficial, but also potentially a new route of attack. How is McAfee getting ahead of that?
Yeah, and it's a constant cat and mouse game, honestly. So it's really about when you're protecting end users and consumers and employees, employers, it's all about that end user and where they're at. The context matters, the communication matters, the content that they're viewing matters, right? So are they getting an email? Are they getting a text message? Are they watching a video? Is the video on an application from a streaming service? Or is it on the web through a browser, right? Like, all of these things really matter, and what type of actual information are you getting at the end of the day? So depending on what we're trying to solve, we have different levers and different engines that we can leverage. And so some of them would be on the XPU on the edge. Some would be naturally actually in the cloud because your data is already in the cloud, working with some service providers. And then there's a hybrid approach where you're really performant if you kind of branch both worlds together. So it's really meeting that customer at that need, at that point, and then basically creating a solution to solve that customer issue wherever they're at.
Makes sense. So I think what we're touching on generally is there's this new class of compute. There's lots of different ways companies can integrate that. So Elise, what is your advice for ITDMs and corporate fleet management considering AI?
So I think one of the most exciting things about this neural processing unit on the endpoints is the fact that companies have access to so much more compute power than they ever did before. And you've heard, I think everyone has talked about doing more on the endpoint. And I think this is going to be a big transition from everyone went to cloud because you could scale really quickly, but holy cow, it is very expensive to do that. So if we can bring some components back onto the endpoints and back onto the edge in sort of a distributed computing nature, I think that's a huge win for everyone. So when I look at kind of how this affects companies and enterprises, if you can harness any of that compute power that is sitting around that won't affect the user's experience, because unless they're on a Zoom call, it's not necessarily being highly used yet, and it's certainly not usually the thing being used in the foreground when we're talking about agent applications taking advantage of it. You can do really complex training of a machine learning model just harnessing your own company's machines that you have for free. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years when we realize we have all of this free compute, because what OpenAI taught us is more data for training is better. Like, that is the biggest difference in all of their GPT models when they went GPT-3 to GPT-4. Pretty much the only difference was that they trained on tons more data. At my company, we just did some for fun math maybe a year ago, and we wanted to see if we were to harness some of the excess compute on our customers' devices, which we would never do this to our customers. You're in charge of your own organization. But if we were to harness that and we wanted to train a large language model, how long would it take us to train like a GPT-4? And it was like a few minutes a night for a month. And it's basically free. No one would notice that.
It kind of reminds me of like the old folding at home or SETI at home projects, right? Where you're distributing across a huge number of systems, basically taking unused compute, if you wanted to do something good with it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So John, I'm going to start with you, but extend to everyone in a minute. What are you hearing from your customers, Cyberlink's customers, about these new AI features?
Yeah, I mean, the AI space and creativity is just moving so rapidly. I mean, people are finding new ways of using this stuff in their creative process every day. But really, what's the common feedback is, how can I use AI to improve the quality of my content and in the fastest way possible? So that's the main feedback that we're receiving.
Great, and open to all, whomever wants to go first.
I work mostly with Global 2000 companies, mostly Fortune 500, and every one of them is saying, yes, we're going to buy AI PCs, but like, what do we do? How do we do it? How are we going to take advantage of it?
And our customers are all seeing AI as a future item that they definitely are going to invest in, but they're trying to make the decision of what is that investment and how do they rationalize it? Is it the cloud? Is it on the edge? What is the privacy and security concerns, especially with their data governance? And how does that look? And so by having these options, they can really start to rationalize and figure out the best place to run those workloads.
And for us, for McAfee, I would say that we feel like we're doing something for society. That was our hypothesis going into this with the research that I had talked about earlier. And what we're seeing is that folks are actually curious about the product. They're like, what is this deepfake detector when they're watching something online? They're clicking on it. They're seeing where that synthetic video and audio is. They're seeing where it actually is real. They're wanting to understand why we flagged it that way. And we're seeing that engagement in the product, the curiosity. And ultimately, people are willing to purchase this product that we're seeing because at the end of the day, it's protecting their finances, it's protecting their reputation. And then we're seeing it in the media too. Like as we hear, actually just 2 days ago, Johnny Depp had to have a press release saying that I am not asking for your personal data or your money, and neither is my team. But unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of dollars went to a scammer because they thought they were interacting with Johnny Depp, for example. So we're seeing this validation there in our product itself in the funnel, but also in society and media as well.
It's a good point. I think about the advancement of hardware over time. Think about gaming GPUs, for example, which are relatively new in the history of PCs. The first non-gaming use case for a graphics card was actually to crack Wi-Fi passwords. Whoops. So, technology is both good and bad, and it's good that vendors like McAfee are thinking about how to get ahead of these new bad actors with this powerful new technology. So, looking to the future, Brendan, what use cases are you thinking about? What's available today? I know roadmaps are a little, you know how it goes, but what are you thinking about?
Well, we're really excited about the future. With our AI companion solution, we believe in a federated AI model, and having AI PC as part of that is amazing, and we're looking to empower more workloads in that use case. So you think about being able to do transcription or translation locally in real time to help facilitate communication and collaboration. That's huge. Or bringing some of that generative AI that is now available in meetings, but having it on that local compute starts to offer a number of options. Beyond that, Zoom's investing in a number of verticals, whether that's healthcare, where putting that processing on the edge can help ensure patient privacy is extremely exciting, or what we can do for frontline workers to enable different use cases and work as folks are out there in the field. So we're really looking forward to the possibilities.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so one piece of advice, Dan, I'll start with you. One piece of advice for organizations out there, what should they be thinking about with AI?
We're all people, right? We're all fathers, wives, sons, grandchildren.
Absolutely.
I have an 87-year-old father that I'm afraid he's going to click on something, and
my parents too. They're 75.
and then people have kids, and they're worried about their kids, rightfully so, right? And then 59% of people either have fallen victim to some sort of scam or they know someone who has. And a lot of people are afraid of actually admitting to that because it hurts their reputation, and obviously they've taken a financial hit on top of that. And when it comes to business, again, we're all people, right? We're all employers, employees in this room, along with the human side of it. And if you take that and look at the business side of the world, there was a story last year in, I believe it was Hong Kong, it was in Asia Pacific, where someone thought that they were hearing a message from their CFO. Sounded identical to their CFO. And then not only that, but they also had deepfake voices for other C-suite members. So they're like, this is legit, and there's gonna be a big deal here, and so I need to wire this money to a banker. Well, that banker was a scammer, and so that was dozens of $1 million that went straight to a scammer. And these things happen, unfortunately, way more than we know about because people don't want to talk about it at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I read an article maybe 4 months ago about a woman, she was in the New York Times, who had a very similar situation happen to her, deepfake voice. Thought it was her son in danger.
Yeah.
Right? This is an interesting development in society, and we have to learn how to
Right,
keep up.
and it's very similarly, Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting last year, he talked about like he would give over that $25,000 if he heard his granddaughter on the other end of the line, but it's not. And he said that it could be the greatest growth industry of all time, being scams, which is really sad to hear. But this is why you need to arm your employees, you need to arm your loved ones with wonderful devices and solutions like AI PCs that can unlock this capability and allow people to be confident when they're online. And it's a very dynamic world these days.
Absolutely. Brendan, one piece of advice.
I mean, I think the biggest thing with AI is really looking and understanding where you want those workloads to process and how you want to leverage it. I think AI is inevitable for every company's future, so it's really thinking about where you want to run it and which AI makes sense and how you're leveraging it within your flow of work.
Elise?
I would say the biggest piece of advice that I have is to measure what you have and make data-driven decisions. We find our customers have millions of dollars of unused licenses for software, nothing of anyone up here, but we'll go in with them the second they download our product and realize they have $1 million of unused Adobe licenses where they just thought that they needed it for all these people, but why not measure it? You can.
Yeah. If you can, do it, right? And John?
Yeah, for me, it's really for content creators. And it's really, if you want to protect your intellectual property and any of the ideas that you have, you're going to want to do it on an AI PC because it's all your own device. You're not sharing it with a third party. You're not helping train other models.
That's great wisdom because even at Intel, we have literally millions of historical documents, specs, facts, figures, and how can any one person ever have access to all of that? How do you even know where to look? Sometimes it's, hey, I knew the right person. What if that person leaves the company, right? So being able to better harness that data and better access that data and leverage it in a way that's just conversational and natural, super powerful. So Elise, Dan, Brendan, John, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Of course, we value your collaboration. AI PCs are actually all about the software. It's really not about the hardware. We're just an enabler. We agree about that. But we look forward to your support and our partnership in the future to keep moving AI PCs forward. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as you depart, we invite you to see Intel AI-powered PCs in the Intel Tech Showcase. That's in the Venetian. And then all of these fine companies, I think you have exhibits as well? No? Some do, some don't?
I guess my mic's off already. If you want more information, I can hang around a little bit. I can talk. And then also go to McAfee.ai, our AI hub, for more information about deepfakes. And if you have an AI PC, you probably have McAfee and deepfake detector on it.
That's probably true.
Yes, I'll also be around as well, or also zoom.us for more information.
LakesideSoftware.com.
There we go. Hey, it still works. Look at that.
Hey, you can check out Promio at the Tech Showcase if you want to see it in action.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.
Mute us.